Fall harvest is nearly finished in much of the country. So what are the key takeaways for beef producers? Here to talk more about this is Mike Murphy of CattleFax. Mike, combine's been rolling all across the country. What are yields looking like as compared to expectations, and what does it mean to cattle producers?
Well, the USDA was projecting a yield about 186.7, and it looks like as you hear the reports coming in that yield's gonna be a little bit shy of that. Actually, our models would suggest we're going to be closer to about a 185 yield.
Okay.
And two really driving factors. Number one, that eastern corn belt got a little bit drier there in the late part of the summer. And obviously that had an influence. And then the second thing is there, across all of the Midwest, we've had pockets of rust, that corn rust. And the producers had to make a decision, do we go ahead and apply fungicide to it to try to treat it or not? Those that chose not to are seeing a difference of 20 to 30, upwards of 40 bushels difference. The reason why they wouldn't have treated is because cost of production relative to the break even on that crop, you're adding cost, and are you really gonna be able to offset that with revenue? Now I think most of them wish they would have probably treated that corn, but we're still gonna have a record crop with the number of acres we had planted this year.
So let's talk global markets, and what do you see impacting the value of corn and beans in terms of global trade and trade policy and exports in general?
Yeah, so we'll start on the soybean sector. Obviously we've had a trade dispute that's been lingering for most of the year relative to the US and China. For the year, China's imported about 220 million bushel of soybeans. That same period a year ago would be over 1 billion bushel. So we've had a huge impact on the trade scenario for soybeans and the lack of global business going on. On the corn side, it's a little different storyline. China's not really a big buyer. They were coming out of the phase 1 trade agreement in President Trump's first term. But since then, over the last few years, they've not been big buyers. But with our price being at the lower end of the range, we're talking about futures in that kind of 4 to 450 level over the course of the last 12 months. We're on pace for this crop market year that started on September 1 to be exporting basically 3 billion bushels of corn, which is by far the largest in history. So we have global demand, whether it's Japan, South Korea, Mexico, some of these other smaller countries are stepping in. So it is good news on that front. Obviously, all eyes are on whether or not the US and China do get a trade deal. And if they do, I think that there'll be a definite positive impact on soybeans, which that psychology would have a lift on the corn market as well. You can't rule out that they may step in and buy some corn as well, like they did with the phase 1 trade agreement. Unfortunately, today it doesn't look like there's a quick resolution relative to the Chinese and the US in terms of their dispute.
Last quick question about hay supplies. What do you see in terms of overall supplies, and what prices people should expect to pay for hay and forage?
Yeah, so if you're west of the Continental Divide, they've been fighting drought all summer long, so their forage situation is tighter. As you move east of the Continental Divide, there's all sorts of feed, whether we're talking about just traditional hay feed supplies. You think about like the state of Kansas, there's a record large milo crop. So there's all sorts of hay out there. And feed in general for the cow-calf sector. You know, prices, it's gonna be so regionally driven, but a lot of this cow hay I think is gonna be trading, especially east of the Continental Divide, somewhere between $75 and $125 a ton. And the nice thing is that most everybody has a lot of just feed, grass. So going into the winter, we're not gonna need as much hay to feed our cows.
Thank you again for your insights. We always really appreciate those.
Thank you, Kevin.
Now, if you're looking for top-notch beef industry research, information, and analysis, then visit the website cattlefax.com.